Colorman lawyers, colorman judges. My support defense. Get your ass in this conversation real quick. Drink your ass some tea. Now let's watch this video. Eat you some dinner and grab hold of iced coffee. Now let's watch.
Jeffrey Epstein, routed through an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands, authorized 3 weeks after she took office. And what does it mean when the same official who promised the American public on national television, "I will never protect anyone connected to Jeffrey Epstein," signs a directive sealing the documents, blocking FOIA requests, and then invokes the Fifth Amendment when Congress asks why? Those are not theoretical questions. Because what happened inside House Oversight Committee Room 214 that Thursday morning was not a routine congressional hearing. It was not political theater. It was not the familiar choreography of lawmakers delivering speeches for television cameras. What unfolded instead looked far more like a prosecutorial moment. One elected official presenting documentary evidence while the nation's top law enforcement officer struggled to explain her own words, her own orders, and the paper trail that connected them. The central question was simple enough that anyone watching the hearing could understand it. Why did Attorney General Pam Bondi authorize a $2.3 million settlement connected to Jeffrey Epstein only 3 days after publicly promising that she would never protect anyone tied to Epstein's network? That question hung over the room long before Congresswoman.
Okay, colorman lawyers, colorman judges. So was she trying to pay him to keep it on hush or delete records? Let's watch more. Let's see. Drink you some tea. Let's watch more.
Jasmine Crockett ever picked up the microphone. By the time the hearing began, the chamber was already packed. Every seat filled. Journalists standing along the back wall, shoulder to shoulder, laptops open, cameras mounted on tripods angled toward the witness table. The Department of Justice staffers had arrived early, carrying thick briefing binders, moving quietly between rows of chairs. The air inside the room had that unmistakable pre-hearing tension. The low murmur of conversations, the rustling of papers, the occasional flash of a camera testing its focus. At exactly 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, Attorney General Pam Bondi entered the room. She walked in with the controlled posture of someone who had done this many times before. Chins.
Okay, Basti, hold up, bitch. Get your ass in this conversation real quick. So you do understand that she was trying to pay back the student loan debt she accrued trying to practice law? Okay, let's watch more.
Slightly raised, shoulders squared. The practiced expression of calm authority that veteran political figures wear when they expect difficult questions, but believe they can handle them. 3 lawyers sat down beside her at the witness table. 2 advisors positioned themselves just behind her shoulder. Pam Bondi had spent years navigating hostile hearings. She knew how these exchanges worked. Members of Congress asked questions. Witnesses gave careful answers. Lawyers intervened when necessary. The clock ran out. It was a system she understood. What she did not yet understand was that someone in the room had come prepared with documents, and not a stack of them, just 3 pages. When Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett walked into the chamber earlier that morning, security officers briefly paused her at the door. Not because she carried boxes of files or a thick binder of evidence, the opposite. She carried a thin blue folder that looked almost empty. When the folder passed through the security scanner, one guard reportedly looked confused. There were only 3 sheets of paper inside. 3 pages. That detail would matter later. Because as the hearing began, nothing seemed unusual. The first 40 minutes followed the predictable rhythm of any congressional oversight session. Members asked questions about Department of Justice budget allocations. Others raised concerns about civil rights enforcement priorities. Some pressed Bondi about prosecutorial discretion and resource distribution. Pam Bondi handled those exchanges the way seasoned officials often do. Measured answers, careful phrasing, and the occasional non-answer delivered with practiced confidence. She looked composed, relaxed even. At one point she glanced down at her phone. Another moment she leaned back slightly in her chair while one representative delivered a lengthy statement before asking a question. From the outside, it looked like a hearing moving along its expected course. Then Jasmine Crockett was recognized by the committee chair, and the atmosphere in the room changed almost immediately. Crockett did not begin with a long speech. She did not deliver a partisan monologue. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she opened the blue folder. "Madam Attorney General," she said. 5 words. Yet something about the tone shifted the room. Conversations stopped. Journalists lifted their heads. Even the stenographer briefly paused her typing. Because Crockett was not speaking the way lawmakers usually speak during these hearings. She sounded like a lawyer presenting evidence. "I want to talk about an email sent from your office on February 23rd of this year." Pam Bondi's expression did not change. Public officials hear references to documents all the time. Many turn out to be incomplete, misinterpreted, or taken out of context. She responded calmly. "Congresswoman, I am not aware of any specific email." Crockett interrupted. "I'm not asking whether you are aware of it," she said evenly. "I'm telling you what I found." She lifted the first page from the folder. And in that moment, the hearing stopped feeling like a political exchange and began looking like the opening statement of a case. "This folder contains 3 pages," Crockett continued. "Page 1 is an email from your Deputy Assistant Attorney General to the Department of Justice Financial Management Division. Date, February 23rd. She paused long enough for the words to sink in. Subject line, settlement authorization, Epstein-related claims. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next sentence. A heavier silence. The kind that spreads when a new piece of information lands in a room full of people who instantly recognize its implications. Crockett held the document so the cameras could see it. "In this email," she said, "your deputy authorizes the immediate transfer of $2.3 million to an entity called Executive Legal Services, LLC. Recipient address, Cayman Islands. The number itself was not enormous by federal government standards. The Department of Justice moves billions of dollars each year. But the context mattered. A payment linked to Jeffrey Epstein, an offshore recipient, and a date that fell only 3 weeks after Pam Bondi had taken office as Attorney General." Crockett set the paper down carefully. "The stated purpose of the payment," she continued, reading from the email, quote, "legal settlement of outstanding claims related to J. Matter." She looked up. "J. Matter," she said. "Jeffrey Epstein." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Some journalists were already
So now tell me more about J. Matter. Was that Epstein name meeting her? Question Bondi. Because that sound resonated prostitution. Let's watch more.
Typing. Others exchanged glances across the room. One camera operator adjusted his lens to zoom in on the witness table. At the center of the room sat the Attorney General of the United States. And now the question had been placed directly in front of her. "Do you know what claims this settlement resolved, Madam Attorney General?" Pam Bondi leaned forward slightly. Her voice remained controlled. Congresswoman, I categorically reject any characterization of improper financial activity within the Department of Justice. That answer might have ended the exchange on another day. It was the kind of statement officials often use to move away from a specific allegation toward a general defense of institutional integrity. But Crockett was not finished. She reached into the blue folder again and pulled out the second page. Page 2, she said. This is the response from the Department of Justice Financial Management Division to your deputy's email. The date was February 24th, one day after the authorization. Crockett read from the document. Quote, transfer completed. $2.3 million wire confirmed. Recipient account verified. Then she read the next line. Quote, all documentation sealed under attorney-client privilege per AG directive. That phrase changed the nature of the conversation instantly. Attorney-client privilege is a specific legal protection. It shields confidential communications between a lawyer and their client. Crockett looked directly at Pam Bondi. That's interesting, she said. Because attorney-client privilege applies to a lawyer and a client. She paused. So who exactly is the client here? The Department of Justice or Jeffrey Epstein's estate? The murmurs that followed were impossible to ignore. Members of Congress leaned toward one another. Journalists typed faster. One of Bondi's attorneys, a gray-haired man in his 60s, leaned toward her and whispered something quietly. Pam Bondi shook her head. She was still planning to answer herself. Congresswoman, she said carefully, decisions about settlement payments involve complex legal considerations. Crockett lifted her hand gently, not aggressive, just enough to stop the sentence. Let me show you how complex it gets, she said. And she lifted the third page. This one was different from the others, because at the bottom of the document, printed clearly beneath a formal directive issued to Department of Justice Division heads, appeared a signature. Pam Bondi's signature. Bold. Unmistakable. The directive was dated...
And now you know the official statement. She was having an affair with Jeffrey Epstein. Pam Bondi was. Find out what you can learn about her more. I hope this video was helpful. I'll talk to you later. Laugh out loud. Let's watch more.
February 25th. 2 days after the money moved. Crockett read the key line aloud. All documents related to Settlement Agreement JZO 225 are hereby designated attorney work product and exempt from FOIA requests. She paused. Then she read the final sentence. Any inquiries regarding this matter must be referred directly to the Office of the Attorney General. No exceptions. Crockett lowered the page slowly. Madam Attorney General, she said quietly, do you recognize your signature? The cameras captured everything that followed. The stillness, the tension. The moment when an entire hearing room realized that something far more serious than routine oversight had just begun. And what happened next would turn those 3 pages into one of the most explosive confrontations of the year. For a moment, the room simply held its breath. The question had been asked plainly. The document was on the screen. The signature was visible to every camera in the chamber. And now the Attorney General of the United States was being asked a question that should have been simple. Do you recognize your signature? Pam Bondi looked up at the projection screen behind Jasmine Crockett. The document had been enlarged so that every line of text was visible across the hearing room. Her name appeared at the bottom in dark ink, written in the distinctive looping style that had appeared on dozens of Department of Justice directives since she took office. She did not immediately answer. That hesitation might seem small to someone watching casually, but in a congressional hearing, every second carries weight. Lawyers, journalists, and lawmakers are trained to notice silence. Silence can mean caution. Silence can mean calculation. And sometimes silence means a witness understands exactly what the question implies. Crockett waited. She did not interrupt. She did not repeat the question. She simply stood there beside the screen, holding the 3 pages that had just transformed a routine oversight session into something that looked increasingly like an evidentiary confrontation. Finally, Pam Bondi spoke. "Congresswoman," she said slowly, "I sign hundreds of directives each month in the course of running the Department of Justice. I would need time to review the context of any specific document before confirming its contents." It sounded measured, professional. But legally, the answer created a problem. Because the question was not about policy context. It was about a signature. And Jasmine Crockett knew it. Let's talk about context then. She replied calmly.
I'm going to show you how I trade in 60 seconds or less.
Alright, so step one, what you're going to want to do is find your daily body. So you want to find your